Welcome to the Lead for Pollinators Log In to Learn webinars. I am Michelle Colopy, Executive Director of Lead for Pollinators. Our webinars are supported by the following sponsors: Hispanic Marketing and Public Relations. Visit HispanicMPR.com for interviews, presentations, and more. Beauty Beyond Belief Seeds specializes in wildflower seeds, heirloom vegetable seeds, grass seeds, regional wildflower seeds, and special use wildflower mixes, including their line of 4 great pollinator mixes. Shop for your garden and pollinator habitat at bbbseed.com. 2 Million Blossoms magazine will awaken readers to the vast diversity of pollinating insects and animals. This quarterly magazine will delight, entertain, and name those well-adapted creatures buzzing through our world, because the more we know about pollinators, the better we can provide habitat. This quarterly magazine explores how bees, birds, butterflies, and bats enhance our planet. Subscribe today using the discount code word LEAD and receive $5 off the subscription rate for 1 year. Visit 2millionblossoms.com. OPN Seed has partnered with Lead for Pollinators with pollinator mixes created for beekeepers and anyone who wants to attract and support pollinators. You can get native seeds for eastern U.S. planting zones at OPN Seed. Go to the Lead for Pollinators website and select the Donor Affiliations page to order your pollinator habitat seeds. Select Support Our Cause to view featured seed selections, and a portion of sales generated from our website will help support our work. Missed a webinar? You can view these topics through our pay-per-view access. Visit our website for the recorded Login to Learn webinars and select a topic today. Our presentation today discusses the business and organizational risks faced by beekeepers, farmers, and member associations. This presentation will guide you in being a partner with your insurance agent, learning the questions to ask your insurance provider, and most importantly, understanding how to protect your agricultural business and member association. This presentation does not endorse any specific type of insurance, insurance carrier, or company. Our speaker is Jeremy Troyer. He maintains a license in property and casualty insurance, doing business in Ohio and Indiana. Since 2017, he has been the manager of agribusiness lines at Mennonite Mutual Insurance Company. Please welcome Jeremy Troyer.
Welcome, everyone, to Assessing Risks for Beekeepers, Farmers, and Member Associations. We'll spend the next 30 minutes or so giving you some insight into why you need insurance, the type of insurance you may need, and some of the exposures that your operations may include. My name is Jeremy Troyer. I am the manager of the agribusiness lines at Mennonite Mutual Insurance Company. I'll give you a little bit of the background of my experience in insurance. I spent about 10 years on the claims side of the insurance industry. I worked for an independent adjusting firm, so I did claims inspections for multiple insurance companies. We did a lot of property and casualty claims, so anything from fire investigations to wind, hail, water losses, and things like liability claims, maybe a med pay or an injury on premise, and handling the investigation into those. We had quite an array of different types of claims come through our firm, so I had a pretty broad spectrum of experience in handling claims in multifaceted operations. What I was seeing a lot in the industry was a lot of claims that could have been prevented on the front end. So whether it was a property loss, or maybe there's a roofing issue, or a installation issue, or maybe there was a lack of coverage and the claim wasn't paid. So things like there was a gap in coverage that could have been handled differently on the front end. Um, we did a lot of education and a lot of taking those claims experience and working those into how we approached insurance. And so I thought it felt like it gave me a unique insight into the underwriting piece. And so that led me into commercial underwriting, where I spent about 5 years doing that. And now I am the manager of the agribusiness lines, where I mainly manage a team of farm underwriters, and we're analyzing risks. And in today's industry, farming is not just the traditional farming aspect as most people think about it. So things like beekeeping and equine activities, agritainment, things like corn mazes, pumpkin patches. There's just a slew of different types of operations that are happening on farms, or maybe a suburban type. It's not even a full farm. It's a house with some acreage, and you've got a pole barn, you've got a few animals. But every farm type exposure has a lot of different unique characteristics, and so I think that my experience in the claim setting has helped me, you know, analyze these risks and give some pretty unique insight into the types of insurance people need, the type of risks that exist on those properties, and some hopefully good advice to get policies in the hands of people where they're going to be effective. Everyone knows that you need insurance, but why do you need insurance? A lot of people are not the biggest fan of insurance. They feel like it's a expensive piece of their budget, and maybe they don't see a lot of benefit from it. But I'll tell you, when it comes time, if you've ever had a claim, or you've ever had, the need to utilize your insurance, whether it be auto insurance or farm insurance or homeowners insurance, hopefully you've had, a positive experience, and you saw that the insurance is there, in the time of need, and hopefully your policy was put together and you've got the coverages in place, to help you. The intent of insurance, for at least from my perspective, is for a couple main things. One is to prevent catastrophic loss. So, it's not a maintenance policy. It's not to take care of small things when they happen. Ideally, it's going to prevent, any large losses, large expenses from, you know, weather-related activities, liability situations where somebody files suit against you. Defending lawsuits is a big portion of costs when it comes to liability claims. So both a property loss and a liability claim where you're having to defend yourself can cause debt. You can lose assets. You can, potentially, if you're a business owner, go out of business or go bankrupt. The cost and duty to defend is one of the largest expenses that you'll experience if you ever get into a claim, where maybe you're being sued for your ownership, your actions, your activities, in relation to that injury or that loss that happened. And insurance is there to hopefully not only provide you, property coverage, but also give you a peace of mind that if something does happen from a liability standpoint, you've got some support and you've got somebody to help you defend your case and limit the loss. We just talked about that. Everybody knows you need insurance, and obviously some insurance is required. So everybody's got, most people have state mandated auto insurance, and when I say state mandated, there's minimum limits that you have to carry in your respective state to meet those requirements. You might have homeowners insurance that is required by your mortgage holder. So if you have a bank or a mortgagee on the house, they may require you carry insurance, property insurance on that house as well. You might have seen situations or have been in situations where you're required to provide proof of insurance, to a third party. Maybe you're going to a farmer's market to sell, honey, sell your homemade goods. Maybe you're attending a festival and you want to set up a stand to market your products. and the facilitator of that event is requiring you to provide a certificate of insurance. Those are the kind of things where liability coverage is required by a third party. So we all know that those entities require that you carry insurance. But why do they require that you carry it? Similar reasons why you want to have insurance, for yourself. Um, they want to protect their interest in the property, just like you want to protect, the interest you have in your home, in your car, in your business. Um, they require it because it covers their liability. So if they're hosting an event, they're facilitating a farmer's market, a roadside stand, a festival operation. They're, maybe it's a retail store. It covers their liability when it comes to your involvement in that operation. It also, if they get named in a suit or you get named in a suit while performing a service or selling goods on their premise, it may provide defense costs in case they get sued for some reason. And so, that's another reason why if their party would require that you carry insurance is to provide those defense costs, and that way the burden does not fall on them. So we've talked about, why insurance is important for you to carry, some mandatory types of insurance, some reasons why, other third parties require you to carry insurance, but why you need insurance is the biggest thing I want to talk about. The emphasis on, preventing catastrophic loss and, helping, protect your assets and provide defense costs and those types of things is really important. And so, understanding the type of insurance that you need is going to be key. We sell all of our products through licensed agents. So you can't go to MidnightMutual.com and buy a policy online or go call us direct and buy a policy. You must buy your insurance, at least from Midnight Mutual, through a licensed agent in Ohio or in Indiana. In your state, depending on your carrier, some of the larger carriers you may be able to purchase direct, but a lot of carriers prefer to go through agents, um, mainly because the licensed agents are going to be licensed in the state they're selling in, and hopefully experts in the sector of business that you're inquiring about. The most common type of insurance and what most people think about when they think about insurance is property insurance. So, things like you're insuring your dwelling, your farm buildings, if you have farm personal property or livestock, maybe commercial buildings, those things. So if, a fire happens, if there's a tornado or windstorm, if there's an earthquake, those kind of things are what people typically think about when they think about types of insurance. Liability is a huge and probably one of the areas of insurance where people have the least understanding and maybe the most need. So you have personal liability, you've got farming liability, you may have commercial liability if you're an entity or you have a business. Um, you have premise liability if you're inviting other people onto your premise, whether it be for maybe you host a farmer's market, maybe you're having an event, you host weddings, or you have some type of bed and breakfast or Airbnb. All of those things are going to involve a liability component to where you'll want to have conversations about the type of operations that are going on. There are just many, many additional components of insurance to add both to property and liability pieces of your policy, and they're just pretty much endless. And hopefully, you're going to get with a carrier that can customize your policy to adapt and to, I'll say, be specific to your needs and your type of operations. I mentioned some carriers sell their insurance online, and there's especially with auto insurance, it's really easy to go to one of these big carriers, that are nationwide carriers, and go onto their website, enter your information. Maybe there's some personal information from a driver's license number, social security number, some stuff like that to get some background information. Maybe run a motor vehicle record, and it's convenient and it's fast, and that is attractive to a lot of people because it does take time to explain what you need. Hopefully, if you understand that, but get all the information to somebody to provide a quote for you. The problem with online options are a lot of times it leaves gaps in coverage because those conversations are not had. You're not talking to somebody who is going to ask questions to you about the type of things that are going on, type of exposures that you have. And so, although purchasing policies online is convenient, it is not always the best when it comes to providing you with a policy that's best suited for what your insurance needs might be. Hopefully, you have an access to a local agent in the state and the city you live in. And the things you want to discuss with your insurance agent is everything that's going on with your operations. If you're a small farm, if you're a large farm, tell them the things that you have going on. Well, a few months a year I run a farmer's market. Maybe during the fall months you have a fall festival, or you have a pumpkin patch, or maybe you're producing, you're bottling honey to sell at somebody else's farmer's market. Maybe if people come onto your premise, all of those types of operations are things that will carry a different type of risk to you, and you need to have those conversations with your agent so they can evaluate them, use their knowledge, and give you recommendations, on the types of insurance you need, and maybe some of those add-on coverages that would apply specifically to your, your entity. I just mentioned, determining, your exposure that's specific to you. Assessing risks, is a very difficult thing, and all the information that an agent or that company uses to assess the risk of a farm owner or a homeowner or a business owner is by the information that you're providing. Um, yes, we can see lots of things from public record and from Google images and doing a loss control inspection where the insurance company may send somebody out to do a property inspection, of your farm and your activities, and go through some questionnaires and try to capture as much information as they can. But at the end of the day, the bulk of the information that an insurance company is going to use or an agent is going to use to provide a quote to you is on things that you tell them and information you provide. So, things, like I mentioned earlier, if you're inviting, public onto your own premise, you've got a lot of exposure there, whether it be liable or not. Somebody slips and falls on your property and gets injured, then there's going to be a claim there. Maybe even if you're not legally liable, you didn't do anything negligent, there's a claim there. You know, are you operating on somebody else's premise? Are you taking your goods and services to another property, like I said, a farmer's market, a festival? Are you going somewhere else to, provide, either goods or services of your own, or you're, adding a component to that person who is owning or facilitating that other operation? Your local agent is hopefully specialized and trained to advise you on the type of policy and coverages that you need based on the things that you tell them. They're going to take all the information along with the training that they have and the experience they have to put together a policy for you to provide you coverage for all of your operations, all of your exposures, and be able to explain that to you and get you an affordable insurance package that is going to meet all those needs. When it comes to being affordable, managing the cost of insurance is something that is a pretty broad spectrum. One, choosing your carrier that maybe specializes in your sector and gives you the ability to customize your policy is one way to manage some of those expenses. Going to a specific farm carrier if you're looking for a farmer's policy. Maybe you have a real small operation and you're not really farming. You just need a homeowners with a few enhancements that would provide coverage for something happening on premise or the type of operation that you have going on. Another way to manage the cost of insurance is to take on more of the risk yourself. You can do that through, higher deductibles or self-insurance. Um, Things like, maybe you choose to not insure a certain piece of equipment up to a certain limit. You're gonna, if something happens to that, you'll cover the cost yourself. That will save you some premium, and maybe it's a combination of all those things. Having the right carrier, having higher deductibles, doing some self insurance. Maybe it's a combination of all that stuff to get a price point that you're comfortable with, that fits your budget, and that is appropriate for for your operations. The biggest thing I see is people using insurance as a maintenance policy, and by that I mean submitting claim after claim after claim for small dollar amount things. Maybe you have a fence that gets damaged in a windstorm, and it's, let's say, for round numbers, it's $1,000 in damage, and you have a $500 deductible. So you're going to net a $500 you know return or a claim from your policy. Every situation is different. Everybody's financial situation is different, and $500 in your operation, maybe a big piece, maybe a small piece. That's up to everybody to decide. But the biggest thing to remember is every time a claim is filed with an insurance company, that is going to affect your insurability. It's going to affect pricing. It's going to affect future insurability with other carriers. So it's key to keep in mind to try not to use your insurance policy as a maintenance policy, but use it when you need to. Use it when a large loss happens, something severe is happening from a liability standpoint. You're getting named in a lawsuit. Um, those types of things will help keep the cost of your insurance down and be able to keep it affordable for you, and part of your budget that is manageable. I mentioned earlier that there's lots of different types of farming operations going on these days. And by that, I think I mentioned agritainment and pumpkin patches and those types of things. Well, there's also an area of insurance that, a lot of people are familiar with homeowners policies. Well, when does a homeowner policy kind of turn into a farm owner policy? What are the activities that are going on your premise? What is the amount of property? What is the type of property? What are the things that you may or may not have? That if you have a homeowner policy, maybe there's not going to be coverage if you're doing certain activities. So the key, along with having conversations with your local agent, is actually reading your policy, looking at definitions, looking at exclusions in your policy language, and understanding what you have, so you can be an educated consumer and you can understand that maybe your homeowner's policy is not right for what's going on. Maybe it was right when you bought it, and your operation is growing and getting bigger. You're adding components, you're adding different types of activities to it as you evolve. And maybe that policy is outdated and needs to be reevaluated for your most up to date business activities. If you do have a homeowner's policy, there may be some exclusions for farming or limitations on things like acreage and different types of structures and equipment. And so it's important to ask your agent those questions, to read your policy, and understand, what your current policy provides. If it's a homeowner's policy, and you got some beekeeping exposure, you got some minimal farming going on. Maybe you're a member of some associations where you got some liability components there. Understanding what your current policy has, and asking questions. Um, the great thing is, if your local agent doesn't have all the answers, they most likely have a contact to somebody, who a company direct underwriter or supervisor, or somebody who can actually get those answers for them, and they can relay that to you, and that is specific to your policy. That way you're getting educated and correct information fed to you from the company who's providing your policy. So we talked about types of policies a little bit, homeowners and farm owners and liability. So I wanted to touch base on, you know, specific coverage. So typically property coverage is a more straightforward concept than liability coverage. It's more tangible, it's easier to understand. Um, I've got a house worth this much money. I've got, a farm building or a commercial building that is valued at this dollar amount. Maybe it's scheduled items where you have, I've got jewelry. I've got my wedding ring that's worth this amount of money, and I've got guns or antiques. Um, Maybe you have farm equipment, and you've got, tractors and different kinds of equipment that are going to be, have a certain value. Um, The thing to keep in mind when we're talking about property coverage and specific items, there's some things that are going to be covered automatically by your policy. So if you have a homeowner's policy or a farmer's policy, with your dwelling limit, typically those will have a included amount, a percentage amount of that limit for all of your personal contents. So your clothes, your furniture, the things inside your house. So there's some, contents, and then things like a detached garage or maybe a small shed. There's typically going to be some kind of included coverage for those types of things in your current base policy. If you do currently have a farm owner's policy versus a homeowner's, or even if you do have a homeowner's policy, does it cover your activities? What things are you doing, and making sure there's not exclusions, or making sure that there is coverage for the type of things that are going on. Again, reading the definitions in your policy. Most people are insureds included. You get a packet of paper either in the mail, or you get an email attachment that has a copy of your declarations pages, or maybe your whole policy. It goes into a folder. It goes into the trash can. It happens more often than not. And you know, we get it, but I'm going to tell you from a, consumer side of insurance, and from a, you know, uh, I'll say facilitator of insurance, the best thing you can be is an educated consumer, and read your policy, understand what it covers and what it doesn't, and ask questions. Get your agent involved, ask them lots of questions. Um, Depending on what kind of activities you have going on, if you have a farm owner's policy, it doesn't just cover everything. Ask specific questions. If you may have a farm owner's policy, but if you're going off premise to a farmer's market, or you're doing something outside of that definition of farming that is defined in your policy, there may not be coverage. So if you're doing something like maybe you're selling baked goods, you're producing, you know, uh, animal feed, you're doing something that is, I'll say, in addition to that definition of farming in your policy, you need to make sure there's coverage for it. So I mentioned property coverage is pretty straightforward. Liability coverage is a whole nother ballgame. We live in a sue happy world. Are you going to be held legally liable for your activities? Whether it be somebody's on your premise and gets injured, are they going to claim your negligence, right? You caused the accident, and now that's a whole nother situation to defend. Maybe you're selling, but you're selling a product that you've, either, manufactured, you put together in your farming operations, and somebody got sick, somebody died, somebody, got stung by bees that you own, got bit by an animal that you own. Is there, what kind of liability are you going to have in those types of scenarios? And again, those are the things you want to talk to your agent about, get specific information and answers on, so you're able to protect yourself in case you do get named in a suit. Even if you're not legally liable, you're going to have to defend yourself to get to that point in court, and that's an expensive piece of the puzzle. From an insurance company standpoint, we spend lots and lots of money on attorney's fees and court costs, and you know, even if we know that our insured, our client, is not going to be legally liable for it, a lot of times there's a big expense to get to that point. And so you want to make sure that that's not coming out of your pocket direct, um, and that you've got some support when it comes to legal defense. And that's another big piece of what insurance policies are there for. So asking those questions, is your policy going to provide you that coverage, and that cost to defend, is that included in your policy? So we kind of know what liability is now, and the things that can happen. There's some different types of liability. So, personal or general liability, everybody has every day just by the actions and the things that you're doing. Um, we have farm comprehensive personal liability. So that's the farming type activities. So if you're, you know, harvesting, corn, hay, bottling honey, selling things at a market, maybe you're selling things to a retail store for them to resell, you've got some farming exposure. Commercial liability. So this is for entities. Maybe you've got LLCs, or you're a member of an association that's got some liability. you're going to need a commercial component of liability. If you've got products out there being resold, in the retail world, products completed liability, things like that are going to pop up. The bigger and bigger you get, or the more exposure you have in that liability world, you're going to need to make sure you're having discussions with, your agent and or the carrier to make sure that all of your activities are covered and that you have the right things in place in the event you get named in a suit. And just like we talked about, when you go to take your activities off premise, one thing a lot of people don't think about is assuming liability with your activities. If you're inviting people onto your premise, maybe you're hosting a farmer's market or you're hosting a festival, or you have a website where you're selling, your goods and you offer to sell, your neighbors or your friend is doing a similar, type business and you want to sell their goods too to cut down on costs. Um, by selling the goods of others, are you assuming a liability with those activities? Um, More importantly, are you going to have coverage if you're selling the goods of others and then there's some negligence involved there? If you're having other people onto your premise physically to conduct business, is that something that you're going to have coverage for if they're negligent in some fashion and get in a suit? I can tell you, 9 times out of 10, regardless of who's at fault, if wherever it happens, that landowner or business owner, that person is get named in the suit just because they own that premise. So when you have others conducting business on your premise, it is important to keep in mind you're assuming some liability. And so there's some ways to, disperse that to, I'll say diffuse that so you're protecting yourself. But it's important to have the conversations and understand the ways that you can protect yourself in those types of scenarios. In addition to assuming liability, we want to talk about who's covered by your policy. Okay, well we know that whoever's name is on the policy typically is going to be the named insured. So John and Sally Smith are the people named on the policy. They're the named insureds. You can add additional named insureds. Maybe it's your children, your business co-owners. There's some additional people that can be named with the same rights as those the first named insureds. There's other categories of things like additional insureds and additional interests. So maybe your only involvement is one specific piece of of the operations, and so yourself or that entity will be named as an additional interest or additional insured only for that one component. Again, discuss that with your agent. There's lots of forms, lots of policy language, lots of things to address specific interests, additional interests, and things like that when it comes to adding people to your policy and making sure everybody's covered who has some exposure. Hopefully, the main thing I wanted everybody to walk away with is when you go back to your state, to your business, to your farm, to your home, understanding the coverage that you have in place now. Grab your policy, pull up online, talk to your agent, however you need to get to it. Look at what you have, and look at what you got going on. What are you doing on a day-to-day basis? What's your business? What are you doing as a business owner, as a homeowner, as a member of an association? What type of things you know are you doing that may need insurance? Take those and review them with your licensed agent. Tell them all the things that are going on. That way, they can hopefully give you some, you know, uh, educated and accurate feedback to the type of coverage that is appropriate for you. Um, Another key thing is updating your policy annually or more often if you've got, especially with major changes. But people all the time get into, scenarios where they have a claim and oh, I forgot to tell you I'm doing this. I forgot to tell you I added this addition to my house, or I added this equipment to my farm, or now I'm doing this business on the side, and I need I've got some liability exposure there. update your policy anytime something changes. If you're not sure if it warrants a policy change, get a hold of your agent, get a hold of your carrier if you're buying direct from them, and ask them and get their expertise and let them counsel you on what is appropriate. But I can't stress enough, insurance is there to protect your assets and cover your liability. So whether it be a small, I've got some bees and I sell some honey. This is a hobby farm. I own a horse and it's just for my personal use. I'm just on the board of a co-op. I'm just a member of an association where I giving some volunteer time and giving my insight and experience and education to help them. There is so many things that are could potentially be a liability exposure for you that you've got to protect your assets and cover that liability. Um, Insurance is there to protect you. If you have, you know, any kind of exposures where you can get named in a suit, and really these days it could be anything. Just like if you get in a car accident, you injure somebody else, you're getting sued. If you are negligent and your dog gets out and bites somebody, you're probably getting sued. And let's just make sure that those types of things we know they're going to happen. Insurance companies know that happens every single day. But don't let it destroy, your business, your assets that you've accumulated throughout your life. Don't let it be a life-changing thing. Let's put the right insurance in place with the right people, the right agents, the right companies in your specific area that can protect you, that can keep your livelihood, your family's livelihood, your partner's livelihood, your children's livelihood, keep all those things intact and not let it be ruined by a negative uh, claim situation where maybe it could have been prevented. Hopefully all of that has really kind of triggered your brains as far as your questions you might have. Maybe you've got some specific things I didn't talk about that you're doing or that you're thinking about doing or that happened to you that you can ask questions. I made myself available to try to address as many of those as I can. Claim scenarios, I try to give a answer the best I can, but keep in mind every insurance policy is a contract, and every contract is going to cover different things. So I'll be able to give you as much insight as I can for any questions you might have. But mainly, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate all of you taking the time to learn a little bit about insurance with me. And if you have any questions, let's get them answered.